Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Marvel is f***ing up, and a lot of people hate She-Hulk. I don't want to dive into what's actually going on with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, why so many people are really mad at She-Hulk, and why I think Marvel needs to pivot at least a little bit. Even though I think a lot of the criticism is a little bit crazy, I want to give you some hot AF nuclear level takes in this video, so let's get right into it. But first, I want to clear the air on something, because if you've been watching my streams lately, you might be a little surprised at the intro of this video, because I've been seemingly enjoying She-Hulk, and I've even been saying that a lot of the people that are very much hating She-Hulk are being a little bit ridiculous. And I do hold true to a lot of the stuff that I said in the different streams. Like, for instance, like, it is a She-Hulk show, so if there's going to be a place for heavy-handed, cringy, feminist takes, it's the She-Hulk show.
He's out of line, but he's right.
And I do legitimately feel as though the show itself is getting unfair hate, but I also can't live under a rock. I can't deny what I'm seeing out there online, and a lot of people really hate She-Hulk. And if you don't hate She-Hulk, maybe you're someone like me who sees all of these people being really ridiculous, way over the line with their criticisms of the show, and you're losing sight of the reality that not only is some of that justified, but this actually speaks to a wider problem for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so I want to just kind of dig in to what I think is going on. And that's kind of the first nuclear take, is that all of this hate for She-Hulk is, in my opinion, not actually because of She-Hulk. It's because of a lot of other things that have been going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since Avengers Endgame. This movie is following Love and Thunder, which I thought was really freaking bad. And before that, we had Multiverse of Madness, a movie that I personally really enjoyed, but again, cannot deny the fact that it was a bit controversial with the fans. And I would argue that almost all of the Marvel Phase 4 Disney Plus shows have been really underwhelming. On top of that, there does not seem to be a lot of seriousness going on in Marvel right now. Like, a lot of these shows are having the usual Marvel formula of really quippy characters, people having a good time, a lot of jokes and laughs, but beyond even that, it's not balancing that out with much actual seriousness at all. Like Love and Thunder especially, like, I didn't really feel the stakes of that movie, and Gore the God Butcher doesn't even really butcher gods in the film. And to take on some of the criticisms of She-Hulk directly, I actually am in the camp of thinking that the feminist rant in the first episode was way too heavy-handed and just kind of ridiculous considering the relationship those characters have in the comics. But again, I wasn't like as bothered by it because it's the She-Hulk show. Like, that's, I think, the place to put stuff like that, and the demographics and the potential audience for that show does probably lean more feminine. But the wider problem here, the reason that I can't completely dismiss all of the people that have an issue with this, is because it is seemingly becoming a pattern with Marvel Studios to elevate female characters, give them all sorts of qualities that make them really awesome on the screen, and then seemingly belittling the male characters or making them look like doofuses or making them look not as strong compared to their female counterparts. I mean, literally in the She-Hulk show, Bruce is demeaned for his inability to control his emotions. He is literally told that Jen is just better than him, and that's just kind of weird, man. Like, it feels like we're kind of shoving Hulk down a little bit to elevate She-Hulk, which I don't think is something you need to do. I also think it's kind of silly that if you really want mass appeal for a character like Jennifer Walters, why would you be so heavy-handed and continue in that pattern of sort of belittling the male characters? I've actually recently done, and by recently I mean like in the past couple of months, a big video about why I do believe Marvel's Phase 4 is suffering from a few issues and it needs to pivot, and one of the big ones is this male character problem. whether or not you completely agree that this is going down in a way that you think is not good, you must admit that there's a large swath of people that are having an issue with this. And yes, some of those people are real cringy and extreme, and they think that the twerking scene at the end of episode 3 ended the MCU and that all male characters will forever be crapped on. Some of that stuff is annoying. It bothers me. But there are plenty of regular ass people, just Marvel fans, that want to see more male heroes get the shine and want to cheer for and appreciate these female characters as well. And the more you make it feel like an agenda, the harder that is for people to come to the table honestly, openly, and like what they're seeing. And now I really want to kind of double down on this point and really get into it, because currently there is this wild thing called the culture war going on, and I find the extremes on both sides of that thing pretty freaking annoying. But I think studios and brands make the mistake often of pretending like everybody from this center line all the way over here are not the kind of people you want enjoying your content, and that you can make content that will just please this one side of the culture war, and that's somehow a smart move. Again, I think there are a lot of people more in the center than on the extremes, but even people in the center are going to get a little annoyed and feel like it's not that cool if seemingly the IP and brand has picked a side in this crazy culture war. Star Wars has made this mistake. Lord of the Rings with Amazon, I think, has made this mistake. And a lot of different brands fall into this hole because I think a lot of people just don't appreciate the fact that there's a large group of people that maybe don't feel extreme about these different points, situations, or agendas, but are just kind of tired of it seemingly all coming down on one side. It just doesn't feel right. Second nuclear level barn fire crazy hot take. I'm talking like real white hot. The lack of seriousness in the She-Hulk show is really its biggest issue, and it's actually Marvel's biggest issue. You see, as I just said, we're living in these divided times. People feel differently about these things, and I think content right now has this really difficult job of walking that tightrope and trying to create stuff that can be loved by both sides. But the reality is, I think the silliness and the quirkiness with a lack of seriousness is way more of an actual problem for the MCU than, a bunch of female characters or even some of the male characters being kind of crapped on. Because without real stakes and without feeling like there's an actual draw to what is going on, an endpoint, a direction, a driving force for the narrative, it becomes difficult to stomach goofy, silly things over and over again. In some ways, the identity of Marvel right now is going way too far into this sort of lifestyle, haha, funny kind of content, which can absolutely work. But guys, this is the studio that killed off half of their heroes in a big cliffhanger movie that absolutely shocked the world. Gave us Endgame, which saw the end of Tony Stark in a tragic but heroic way. Marvel Studios gave us Civil War, gave us all of these crazy things in the past, and Marvel Comics has an incredibly rich history of doing funny stuff like a John Byrne She-Hulk run, like friggin' Squirrel Girl and Champions and other books like that, but also incredibly serious game-changing events like Secret Invasion, like Avengers vs. X-Men, like Secret Wars, and on and on and on. The stakes have to be serious and big, and I think that's kind of one of the problems. I also think this is a big divide between fans like myself who kind of see that coming off in the horizon with Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty, which I've been calling since 2019, way before it was officially announced, because in my mind, I'm focusing on the thread that are going to push that narrative forward. I'm focusing on the actual stakes for the Marvel multiverse and the possibilities of the seriousness that will build around that issue. But I can't blame people if they're not as sweaty, if they haven't read the comics, if they don't pick up on all these little hints, if they are kind of normie. I can't blame people like that for being upset, because it feels like Marvel is just introducing all of these new characters, all of these female characters, and it's not being that serious. It's just being very goofy. Like, when I think back to the MCU in the first 3 phases, I think back to absolutely epic character moments and incredible battle sequences and the heroes overcoming great difficulties. The scene at the beginning of Endgame where Tony Stark is ripping out the part of his own chest, putting it in Cap's hands, and just absolutely shook, and all of the history between those two characters that builds up to that moment, that's an incredible moment. And it's moments like those that really make the MCU memorable and more than just a franchise that continues to pump out superhero content. Like, there's actual characters, and watching them grow, change, and come into conflict with each other is a part of the fun and the flavor. If you don't have actual stakes for that, if you're not actually concerned with developing these characters, you're not going to have moments like that. So I truly feel like, as much as people are complaining about political stuff, as much as people are complaining about feminist stuff in the She-Hulk show, which again, I think is crazy. To be fair, without a serious plot driving us forward and actual stakes for these characters, people are just going to check out. Like, it's as simple as that. I think if you ask most people, they would say the MCU doesn't feel the same because it's just too jokey and we don't have some of the characters that we loved before. That's it. It's really not that deep. And again, the She-Hulk show is getting unfair hate from pent-up frustration from the past couple of years of how Marvel is handling its properties. And the last thing I want to say here is that I actually think that Marvel is aware of this and they are adjusting, but they're also still going to do the Marvel thing. They're still going to have a lot of fun, a lot of silly stuff in the movies, you know, fun, quippy things. They're going to have a ton of female characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I also feel as though they will shift a little bit back towards the seriousness, and they're also going to bring in a ton of serious and alpha male characters in the next few phases. I mean, we know that Doctor Doom is on the way. The X-Men are on the way, and there's a ton of Chads in the X-Men, right? You've got Scott, you've got Wolverine, Professor X, Magneto, all kinds of awesome, strong male characters that I think will help to balance out what we've been building with these female characters. You've got Namor, you've got freaking Punisher, you've got Matt Murdock doing an 18-episode show. I mean, we've got the goods here, and I think we've got a lot to balance and to take us back towards more serious stuff, a little more balance with your female and male characters. I genuinely think that things are going to be fine, but it is possible that it's just the fanboy in me and just the copium talking. And man, if we actually head towards Secret Wars and nothing has changed, it's not going to bring the same level of hype, the same universal global celebration of this story that we had with Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And I really hope that Marvel will pivot, and they don't even have to pivot that much. Just pivot a little bit. Just pivot a little bit. Let me know your thoughts about all of that and more in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And if you liked this video, click the video that's on the screen right now. This is the video I was talking about earlier in this video, which is about Phase 4's problems. Yeah, it's right there, and it's a good one, man. Don't you like that thumbnail? Give it a click.